back. I haven't done a live in a while. Haven't really even posted in a while for numerous things. I've been working on some projects that I don't really want to put online right now. So there's that. Um, I'm shutting down my tree service business, so there's that. It's actually taking more time than I thought. And today I am working on this guy. So this guy was actually going to be a I don't know, more of a totem style sculpture. And then I was going to make a bird bath or a bird feeder sculpture out of it, which I'll still do, just not with this guy. Um, and I settled on finally this base here. I've got dust all over me, so it's getting handprints on the sculpture. Sorry, but this is the base. It's painted gold right now. It's not stained gold. It's a little too much gold for the color tone of the sculpture and the wood. So I am going to resand this, but I did this on purpose. I am actually leaving all the cracks gold, and I didn't fill them with epoxy because epoxy looks different when you use tinted epoxies, like with the metallic flake and stuff. It's not bad. It's not what I wanted for this sculpture. I actually like the depth of the cracks and things like that. I will pour some clear epoxy down in these cracks later on and just make them like lock in that gold, but also just give it some structure so it doesn't split and stuff as quickly or as easily. When you're dealing with wood this size, I've done a video on it in the past, and I'll probably do more on it in the future. There's no way of actually getting it 100% dry within like years of it sitting. So this is a piece of green ash for the base. This is a piece of Siberian elm for the top. This piece here, in its current state, it's 14 inches like deep. It's about 18 inches tall, and it's about 13 and a half long. And it would probably take somewhere around 5 years of it sitting in shade to fully cure out and become what most people consider, dry wood of like 8% or whatever, maybe even more, depending. Green ash is a tight grain wood, so it doesn't tend to release water as quickly. It also does check and split. A lot of guys will wax the fronts or paint the fronts or the ends where the grain is, where you see the full rings, so that it doesn't split. But then you have to wait even longer to use it and things, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want absolutely dry wood that doesn't split, it's a waiting game, and it's a care game. You have to have the right kind of facilities. You need to have roofs that moderate what kind of sunlight they get, all that kind of stuff. And I do that for some lumber and things. I build furniture and stuff as well. So with certain kinds of lumber, it's worth it. For my sculptures, I actually like the textures. A lot of guys will come in here and cut all this, all this loose or flaking grain fiber out to make the break, the fracture, and the crack look clean. Technically, there's nothing wrong with that if you want to do it. However, it does weaken them, and I actually like the look of it. I don't know, it makes it more organic to me, makes it more natural. And so I leave that stuff. I actually don't come in here with mini files and file all that out all the time. Now, if you look here on the side, I don't know if you guys can see it from the live, but I have cleaned up a few of these a little bit because they were bigger gouges. So I do some. I just use my own personal judgment. Here's a good example of one that I did, that big crack. I did shave it down with a chisel a little bit, then went back and sanded it. I didn't get it all like perfectly smooth, but I did work on it a little bit to get it, where I want it, so that, in my opinion, it doesn't look fuzzy and hairy, but it also has like the structure it needs and it looks organic. So it's always that balance, right? Like it's art. It's up to you. You guys get to make that decision. The only time that would change is if you have to, for some reason, make it work for somebody that you're trying to sell to. Like, let's say it's a commissioned piece and they're very specific about what they want, and you agreed to it. Sorry, I forgot the comments. Bentley, hi. Thanks, man. Nice work. Says Peter, hi. Hey, guys. Thank you for stopping by and checking out. So this is Siberian elm. Real quick note. If you guys have been watching my channel in the past, you'll know I was a tree climber. Well, I still am a tree climber, and I do tree work on the side, but I'm shutting down my company, right? But all of this wood that I have is actually wood that I harvested through the tree service company. I hate wasting wood. So even down to like traditional cottonwood, silver poplar that people think is kind of trash wood, I find ways to use it for sculptures and things. If I can't sell them in a gallery or whatnot, then I just give them away or whatever. If I find somebody who I feel, really likes it and is deserving of it. Most of my pieces are either pretty small or they're fairly large. This piece here is not huge, but it's big enough. It's about, let me see, what is this thing? So it's right at 41 inches tall. And like I said, it's probably right around 16 inches wide with everything. Let me spin this back around. I haven't fixed all this because I haven't like permanently fixed it all because I'm still working on it. So that is right at 21.5 inches wide. So that kind of gives you an idea. In depth, it's about 14 inches. So, I mean, it's fairly sizable. Ash wood is very dense and very heavy. Elm is not as dense as ash wood, but it's pretty dense. It's pretty heavy. So this thing probably weighs right now around 160 pounds. It will get lighter with the years as it starts to just get rid of more and more of that water. Now, what I'm planning on doing with this base currently is I am going to take this and I am going to sand all of this gold off, just leaving, this is spray paint. I'm just going to leave the gold in the cracks and in the divots. So, one thing that I like to talk to people about when we're talking about sculpting, and especially, I get, not a lot, but I get some comments about sculpting and whatever. You have to understand that there's a difference between flat and smooth. And I go for smooth oftentimes more than flat. I usually let the wood react and talk to me, and I create shapes and forms that are based on that concept of it being smooth, but not particularly flat. Now, where that will change is like if I need the base to sit flat on the ground, I do have like a router jig, and I use like my electric hand plane and sander to get it flat so it'll sit flat on the ground, right? But that all being said, my goal, like let's say 9 times out of 10, is not to get something flat, but get it smooth. And when I say smooth, now here's another thing. I'm not looking for flawless. To me, the flaws and things in the, in the wood itself actually create part of the texture. I'm a very strong believer in texture. It's just how I am. Once again, not saying everybody has to do that. I'm not saying it's the right way, right? I'm just talking about what is my preference here. And so I often will leave some sanding marks in certain areas where I don't feel that they're like ugly or obtrusive. And I will also leave like gouges and little things in it that I don't find to be as unsightly. Now, there are stuff that I will just be like, that looks trashy, it looks bad, so I get rid of it. So when I'm sanding, I don't go for absolute flawless. I just go for what is, reasonable for my taste and my style. Once again, this is how you build your style. It's what you choose to start to accept and not accept, and what you choose to spend your efforts and time on removing versus leaving, right? So as you're working on your sculptures, work with that. Now, as I said, like as I showed you, this thing moves and stuff right now. I can take it off. See? You know, final assembly, of course, is called final for a reason. It's because that's the last step you do when you make sure that it is what you want. Now, this can be a bit of a challenge because with the weight of this thing, I don't really want to be carrying it around, shipping it, moving it. Man, sorry. Lots of dust. I don't want to be like moving it around, shipping it and all that kind of stuff. When it's put together, finally, if I can avoid it, just because it's harder to move around. And like I said, this thing currently very heavy. So, you know, if I can keep it in pieces and display it without it being, you know, like firmly put together, that's better until it gets to its final home. And then I will, you know, take it and assemble it and put it all together. For the pole and the bar and the attachment, I'll probably use epoxy in it. That's what I usually do. I have my own ways of making epoxy kind of stick a little bit better. So I do that. I fill the hole. So, you know, I have the bar is right at 7/8 and I have a 7/8 bit, but they don't fit super tight. It's just how it is. Different manufacturers are more or less precise. And for what I do, I don't buy the heaviest, like the most expensive drill bits and stuff because I don't make enough money on my sculptures to do that. This is just something I do for fun. And so I usually have to pack them with something to kind of keep them stable. You can pack them with all kinds of stuff, mortar, paste, sand, whatever, cement. And then I can epoxy them in and it holds. Once again, remember, this is fine art. It's not intended for people to like be playing with and that kind of stuff. So if it's fragile, it's okay as long as it's serving the purpose of art, which is also why, if I can, I like to like be able to get it to where it's going, then do final assembly for people there. It's also easier for shipping, whatever. If I'm shipping it, it becomes harder to finally assemble it there. Sometimes I can walk people through it, but sometimes I just have to put it together. Then I'd have to crate this thing and then ship it. And that's expensive and it's quite cumbersome to do. So, you know, there are things that you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with sculptures this large. Ideally, somebody locally would get it, but where I live is kind of country, and this is not really their style. So it's harder to sell this kind of work there. Lately, the galleries I've been in just aren't really doing sculptures like this because they don't have a lot of space. And so, but this is my preferred thing. I would rather build larger format sculptures than I would, you know, like small stuff and whatever. I don't know, there's just something about it. Like it just, you know, it just has its own being, which I really like. So real quick, if you guys are interested, I'm going to go over a few of the tools that I used on this. I don't know if any of you guys are doing wood sculpting like this in large format, but if you are, there's a couple of tools that I've used that I used frequently. This is the Irwin Marple, I think they're called, chisel. I have the set of 3. I really wish I had bought the set of 5 or 6. I can't remember. Really like these. Now, these are not intended to like be rough chisels. You don't want to be taking our normal hammer and pounding on these things. You'll ruin the handle and yeah, it's just bad. The steel on these is really nice. It's really well made. They work really well. I've been super happy with these. I will go back once this video is done and I will put links to these tools in the description if you're interested. They will be Amazon affiliate links. I am not sponsored by any of these companies, just FYI. This is just what I have chosen to use. So there are some ones out there called Cherry or something like that that I had looked at. A bunch of guys on like fine woodworking forums said that these were just as good in make, in quality, and way less expensive. And they are way less expensive. Like the Cherry ones are, you know, upwards of like $250, $300, something like that. And these are somewhere right around 80 bucks for the 3 set. And I think it's, or 60 bucks for the 3 set and 90 for the 6 set or 5 set. So I've been super happy with them. If you use the right kind of sharpening, which I have that little guide that has a wheel on it, and you clamp this in and you get it right at the right angle and you run it on your stone, these things sharpen really well. And they stay sharp for a long time. So I've been super happy with this guy here. Another tool that I used a lot on this is this little guy here. So I do have some battery powered chainsaws and things. This is what I use for rough shaping. This is the Echo 2511T. Mine is modified. You don't have to have a modified one. Small work like this, it would work without the modification. However, if you do want to modify it, make it a little bit better, porting the exhaust and then getting either a Husky Pico chain with a matching bar and sprocket, you have to change all that, or getting the steel mount bar that's been modified for this and runs the steel nano, or no, sorry, the LP, the 1/4 inch LP micro, makes this really good. I use this to cut all of these angles right on this. I even use it to make the main bore and then finish this out without it. I also use the chainsaw to carve into this and get that groove in. And then I went back and sanded it. So this guy has been a huge help. I really like this little saw. Top handle, it's the lightest gas-powered chainsaw on the market. Makes it really easy to finesse. You can get what they call carving bars, which come to a point. Makes this really handy to have. But you don't have to use this one. There are electric saws you can use. There are a bunch of different saws that you can run. This is my favorite. It's the best value for the price that I found. And I used to use this as a professional tree climber, and now I still use it for my sculptures. Also, I have owned multiple electric planers, right? I've owned various ones of different brands. By far, this Makita, what is this one called? It's the KP. I don't know if you guys can see that in the shadow, but it's the KP 0800. By far the best planer I have used. It's just really powerful. It's really smooth. The adjustments are really easy to set. I am gonna have to change the knives here soon. So I will have to see how easy the knives are to change, because none of these that I've ever owned have been that easy. They're always hard to adjust and get set right and whatever. But me planing all this ash and all this elm has really done a number on this guy. But yeah, an amazing little, just an amazing little tool, and very adjustable, very powerful. Can't complain. It is a little heavy, but I can handle that for the power that I get out of it and performance. So, also, for my, I guess it's finished rough sanding, I guess is what you'd call it, where I've cut it with the chainsaw or I've used like the angle grinder with my, I am using an angle grinder with an Arbortech turbo plane, which I don't have here, so I can't show that. It's in the garage. I just don't want to go find it. This is what I use. This is a DeWalt variable speed rotary sander. This is not orbital. It doesn't make orbital movements, right? It only makes rotary, so it spins clockwise. And this is the DWE 6401DS. And this thing is so crazy useful. Especially now, I want to make note on softwoods or really porous grained woods. This will easily leave deep gouges and marks. So first off, be careful with what speed you're using it on. Maybe slow it down a little bit or speed it up depending on what grit sandpaper you're using. Also, be very careful about what grit sandpaper you're using. And then also be very careful about getting on your edges too deeply, because it will gouge and stuff. So it can do that. Also, it can twist the sandpaper and make wrinkles, and you have to fix that with time. My pad is getting a little worn out, but it's still working, so I'll continue to use this as it is. And I love this tool. Like, not one of my sculptures have I not used this on that I can think of. So like, once I've used the chainsaw and blocked off all these weird angles or whatever, I'll come back and I'll use this, and this helps me get it down to it just takes off all those like ripples from the chainsaw or the planer or whatever, right? That's how this works. It gets it relatively smooth, but nowhere near what the orbital sander can do. So this is the step in between rough cutting it and rough blocking, getting to the point of like actually being somewhat smooth. Once again, my stuff's not typically flat, it's just smooth. So keep that in mind. But because this is 5 inches and it's pretty flat, you can lay this down to where you're touching just behind the center point up to the front, and you can actually smooth stuff pretty well and get it pretty flat if you go and that's what you're looking for. So after I use the plane, all these flat spots on this, I used the plane on all that, and then I went back with this and sanded it to get those lines that the plane leaves out, to if there were any like tear out or whatever, I could start to work on it with this and get it down. And I usually, the only thing this thing ever runs is usually this Diablo 80 grit. And after that, I go straight to the orbital. So I have run 40 and 60 grit before. This is pretty aggressive. It leaves pretty dark, deep lines. With the 40 or 60 grit, I usually just run 80 grit. And once again, it is variable speed. It is pretty fast. So you have to kind of keep an eye on your sandpaper. You'll start like burnishing and polishing the wood rather than sanding it if you're not careful. So, but I really like this thing. This is one of my favorite tools. Has the handle mount on both sides so that you can use either side for the handle. And it's super comfortable in the hand, and it also has the trigger lock. So you push that button in and your trigger is locked and you can run it. So I use this thing like today. I've probably used it 4 hours straight today to get all this sanded. Another thing that I'm using is this little guy. So I do have a compressor and I do have a nozzle, and everybody's like, well, why don't you just use a compressor and the nozzle? Well, first off, the big compressor I have is being used in a different location for a home remodel. So there's that. Also, the small compressor I have is just a cheap small pancake compressor, runs out of air very fast. This little guy on setting 3 will do 190 or 160. It's 160 CFM. No, sorry, 160 mile per hour air force. And it's super handy. It's super small. You can also go down to setting 1. I don't know what that is, maybe 70 miles an hour or something. Not nearly as much. And it does have settings 1, 2, and 3. And I use this to blow off the table, to blow out the cracks and all that kind of stuff. And it helps me, like, I don't have a hose hanging around. you know, I don't have all this stuff because I already have enough wires and stuff for my tools. This thing is just like sitting on the side, and when I'm done sanding for a while, grab this and I just blow everything off in between sands. That way I can check what I need to do again. Because when you're using a good orbital sander, right, it's going to be such a fine orbital motion that you almost, it becomes cloudy. It becomes like pasty almost. So what I do is I actually take this and I do an area and I blow it off, and then I go back and sand what I missed or what didn't get sanded as well as I wanted it to. And if you try, like, especially with these fine grains, if you try wiping it off, which you can do, it just kind of moves it around more than it really wipes off a lot of it. And this just gets rid of it. Plus, like when I'm doing chisel work or chainsaw work, or when I've done, you know, planing work and I have all this, it's all on the table around the base, and I want to move it, but I need to make sure it's flat so I can see what flat is and different things like that. So I use this. And it's super small, it's super handy, it's out of the way, and it cleans up really well. So I really like this thing. This is the Ryobi, what is this thing called? The P755, I think it is. Once again, after I get done with this, I will put all the tools in the description when I put this out, which will be later this evening. Yeah, this is the Ryobi P755, and it runs the 18 1+ batteries, the 18 volts. So and it on like this 4 amp hour, it'll last forever. So good. I just really like this, really good. All right, so one last tool that I'm going to go over before I cut this off. Well, actually two. So I have more tools, but these are ones that I've been using today, and that I have at my hand. So on this in here, and I'll do another video about it, but to do this and sand, I actually use 3 tools. I used the I used the chainsaw first to start the hole, and then I opened the hole using how did I do that? I'm trying to think. Give me a second. Then I use the Bauer angle grinder, because I found that this is just me, I found that Bauer angle grinders, like their $60 ones, have been as good as any of the Ryobis or even the Makitas that I've owned. So these days, I just go get the Bauers, and it's not that they last a huge long time or anything like that, but they last as long as all the others. And yeah, Makita and Ryobi have warranty, but Ryobi, usually I'm just out of warranty on them. And Makita, even though it has a longer warranty, I have to mail it off, and they usually charge me to ship it. And in the end, I'm not really saving that much more money when they don't last as long as they used to. Makita used to last longer than any other tool that I had. Carol L, hi, thank you for stopping by and checking it out. But they're not as good as they were. It's just a sad fact. So the Bauer angle grinders, I use those. And I have the ArborTech turbo plane on it, and I used it to carve out this. I just kept working it until I could get the head of the angle grinder all the way through, and then I would come on this side over here, and I would auger that out a little bit too. And then once I was done with that, I have one of the Win, they call them detail sanders or file sanders. It's a long nose, and it's only like 1/2 inch wide. It's a rail, it's a belt sander. The handle almost looks like an angle grinder, and there are some adapters that you can attach to an angle grinder and make these that you can get on like Amazon or whatever. I have the one by Win Power Tools, WEN. It was like 40 bucks, I think. And is it cheap? Yeah, it's kind of cheap. Is it worse than like Harbor Freight's? No, not really. Harbor Freight's is a little bit more expensive. And then there's like ones from Dynafile and all these that I used to use in like actual metal fabrication shops, and those are like $600, and I don't need one of those. So it's worked pretty well. It doesn't throw the belt off so far. It's been doing pretty good. The sandpaper that came with the Win, it comes with a few sample pieces of sandpaper. It was all right. The joint where the sandpaper on the belt meets was very noticeable. It made a bumping feel very aggressively, and it started to peel off from there. That all being said, I use that little thing to flatten out the chainsaw marks and the turboplane marks in here, and well, not flatten, smooth, once again, to give it this texture. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, and I probably should have. We live in Western Colorado, and I love the landscape here, especially going out toward Moab. So this sculpture, while abstract and not representative of anything in particular, was inspired by that landscape, right? So this is like very typical of what like the Arches would look like in Arches National Park, Eastern Utah, Western Colorado, right? That it's very common to see these in the Red Rock. And then this is like a slot canyon kind of deal with the curves and the textures. So that's mimicking that texture. The knots in here actually help to represent and give that feel of they get these little caves where the sandstone and limestone break off in the wind erosion and the snow melt. And they're not very deep a lot of times, but it looks kind of like these. So this piece really just, I started out with a very vague concept, and I do that a lot. I have a very basic idea of what I want. I wanted to perforate a hole in this, and I wanted it to look somewhat like a big piece of rock would in the Western landscape. And then I followed the textures, and this was actually a big check, a split, where it had split open in the drying process, and this is only half of the piece. I actually cut from corner to corner of the block off, and I have another like half of it sitting over there. And then what was all split and loose in here, I took the chainsaw and started gouging, and then I took the Arbortech arbor plane or turbo plane, started smoothing it into textures. It looks like water is run down it when the light's on it, right? It's wavy and wobbly. And then I sanded it once again with, the DeWalt sander. And my final sanding is this guy. And I'm not gonna lie, these guys aren't cheap. This is a Festool, okay? And I'm gonna tell you up front, must you own a Festool? Absolutely not. I just bought this a couple of years ago, and for years I was using Ryobi and Rigid and DeWalt sanders, and you can get the job done. So why did I finally go from like $100 sander to a $500 sander? Well, to be fair, this is like $325 without the kit, without the case and the sandpapers. I bought the whole kit. It was like 500 bucks. Well, there's multiple reasons. One, the quality of them is just great. Like, I know guys that have had these and used them for years and years and years, and they just last. The DeWalts, the Makitas, the Ryobis, the Bosches, and the Rigids that I've all had that have been like somewhere between 60 and 130 bucks ish, have not lasted nearly that long. Probably 9 months is all I get out of them when I'm using them like super aggressively to make lots of sculptures and furniture. But this guy, he's going on, 6 months, 7 months now, maybe a year, actually a year. And it feels it feels almost brand new. Plus the orbital motion of this is way finer way finer than any of the other ones I've used. It doesn't vibrate my arm, so I have arthritis. Well, I don't know if it's arthritis. I have tendonitis. That's what it is. And my joints hurt and stuff sometimes from, what's it called? Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate the donation. So you guys can donate if you'd like to. I haven't mentioned it because that's not why I'm doing this, but I do appreciate Carol donating a little bit for me explaining my process and the tools and things. And so this thing has been so refined. I notice a difference in the finish of the sanding. I have to sand less time to equate the same quality with this sander. And this is the Festool sandpaper, but I have tried it with Diablo. I've tried it with some others like the Bauer sandpaper. Now, quality sandpaper does make a big difference, but it hasn't made as big of a deal as the sander itself. The sander is really what makes the difference. It's really well balanced. The way you can use it is just great. Super ergonomic, very clean. The dust filters work amazingly. You can hook it to dust extraction systems if you put the right adapter on it for your whatever your dust collection is or whatnot. Has a huge cord. I mean, I think it's like a 15-foot cord, which is amazing. Most sanders don't have that. It is variable speed. It goes to up to 6, and 6 is like you could put a polishing pad on it and really get some polishing done at level 6. So there's that. Also, the cord unlocks, and so you can buy just the cord on this. Like, this whole tool is pretty much rebuildable, which makes it significant in its value proposition as well. This is one of my favorite, like, this has been one of the best purchases that I've had in a long time. I use it so much, it was just time to get a good one. And it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt my body. It's not overly heavy, but super well built. It has fallen a couple of times off the table. Nothing wrong with it. You can buy these pads. So currently I'm just running the, what they call the pad saver, which, you know, you've seen them on all these sanders. It's this little foam pad here. And I do also have a contour pad, which is this guy here. And this goes on here. So you put this guy on the pad saver, and then you put your sandpaper on. And now I can really sand in all those areas where you need it to squish and contour without damaging the pad. I really, really like this sander. Now, is it better than like the Mirkas or one of those others? I don't know. I've never used an orbital sander by Mirka. I have used some of their rotary sanders, and I've used a couple other power tools that they have, but I've never used their orbital sander. I can tell you that at the shop, they sell both Mirka and Festool. This one, so this is their finish sander. Keep that in mind. That's why it's up here. They do have one with a handle that goes between orbital and rotary, and it's more expensive, but it's not quite as much of a finish sander. It's more of a process sander to cut stuff down and to rough smooth, if you want to call it. I guess that's a term. Semi-smooth stuff, and then this is what you use to get that fine finish. And it's more expensive, but it has the handle on the back and whatever, and that's how Mirka's kind of felt to me. I didn't like it as much as this one. This one's way better in my opinion. So I'm super stoked on this. Love this sander. If you're going to get one and you're ready to upgrade, I can't say enough good things. This is the ETS 125 REQ. Now, that all being said, there is a 6-inch version of this. 125 is their millimeters, and 125 is what 5 inches ends up to be. So, keep that in mind. There's a 6-inch version of this. Would be a little bit more expensive, but still, it's still great. For the stuff I do with the different sizes, I think this is probably better than the 6-inch in my case. If you're doing like finished carpentry and furniture, the 6-inch might be better for you because it would cover more area. So I love this tool. And the last tool I have here to review for you guys, go over real quick, is this guy here. So this one is worn out. It is just absolutely worn out. Now, this one says Miller on it because I bought it at a welding shop. This one actually has filters in it for like welding fumes and toxic fumes that come off of paint and whatever and whatnot. So that is super awesome when you're dealing with different finishes or whatever. I've been using walrus oil and Odie's oil, and they're non-toxic, so I don't have to worry about that as much. But if you are using CA glue a lot, which I've been doing, or epoxies, they are toxic, especially when you start sanding them and they get hot and they fume off and whatever. Or when you're pouring them before they've cured, they're toxic. With the right filters, this little guy does a lot. It's super compact. This one's worn out. I have another brand new one that I need to start using. Goes over your head. It's very compact. I have a welding hood, and this goes under the welding hood that I use for my welding, because I used to be a metal fabricator, so I do metal work as well still. Also, I have one of the Air Trend Pros, that helmet that comes over, and it's a face shield, and it's got the fan on it, so it keeps from fogging up and that kind of stuff, which I really love, and I will go over that again in the future. It's super. This goes inside because the Air Trend Pro is just a dust shield. It's not like a toxic. It's not a respirator. This is a respirator. There is another brand online. I will put the Amazon link on this on the video when I put it up later. And this thing has, I don't like respirators. I am very hot natured. I sweat a lot. I get congested in these, but I gotta tell you, this is probably one of the easiest that I've ever used to breathe through. I even tried the RZ mask, and I don't want to bash any brands. RZ, from what people have said, they feel like they're some of the most comfortable, easiest to wear, easiest to breathe through and stuff. And that's fine if you feel that way. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. For me, they felt very hot on the face. I just felt hot all the time. This guy, I don't feel as hot. I do sweat still because, well, it's a mask and it's covering, and you're breathing out hot air. I can feel this valve though open and the air go out when I breathe. And when I breathe in, I can feel cool air rushing in, which is really nice. It is silicone, so it's super comfortable on the face. Now, like any respirator, if you have a beard, do know that it may not seal as well as it should, and you have to kind of keep that in mind when you're buying a respirator. That's not going to be this respirator's fault. It's going to be any respirator's fault. In fact, according to the OSHA standards and different things for respirators, you can't actually have a beard in certain industries and wear any respirator, because it will create a gap between the respirator and the face. And so you can have a goatee if it's trimmed within a certain perimeter, or you have to shave. And like 3M has a manufacturing plant here. Some of the people I know have worked or do work for them. Same thing. Same thing's gonna go with this. If you want it to be fully effective, you can't have facial hair that's long enough to impede it, right? So keep that in mind. But this thing, by far my favorite. In fact, this is my third one in 6 years. I'm pretty rough on them. Welding light, the UV on welding will actually dry any plastic out, right? And goes the same with this. I've put this thing on and off so many times. You can see the elastics just kind of janky. It's not very, it doesn't, stretch like it used to. And so keep that in mind. It's just not super great after a while, but they last me probably 2 years at a time before I have to replace them. It's super amazing. It's just with time, with different kinds of things. One thing to know, when you have any tools that are rubber, if they're sitting in your woodworking shop and you have dust, or if you're doing clay work and you're sanding, or plaster work and you're sanding, anything that has that really fine material that wicks moisture. So wood, of course, if you put wood chips down on a puddle of water, they absorb it really fast. If you put down gypsum dust from like Paris, plaster of Paris, sheetrock mud, if you're doing any kind of like concrete forms or anything for your art, all that stuff, with the sanding of it, stonework, anything, creates a dust that absorbs moisture very quickly and dries things out. Anything that you have that is rubber, silicone, or like the elastic in your welding, in your mask is also like polyester usually, or something like that. It will dry them out. It will make them brittle with time. So you're gonna have to replace this stuff just based on the fact that if you're around that environment, it's gonna be bad for it and it is gonna wear. The cool thing though is that the silicone is as good as it was the day I bought it. And I've never thrown one away because the silicone was a problem. The silicone's always good. It's gotten to where these plastic pieces break or whatever, nothing else though. I love this thing. I can't say enough about it. I can't remember who the brand is. They make these and then they sell a branded one for Miller, but Miller doesn't make this. It's another mask, and I will put that once again in the description for you guys. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm gonna actually sand this real quick, not all of it. I just want you guys to see what I'm doing. And we are gonna take this gold off now that it's dried and see what's left when I sand it. So stick around for 1 sec. So I'm gonna sand with 120 grit, and we're gonna see what happens and how it looks when I start sanding. I might have to go down to 80 grit, but I am going to start with 120 and see if I can get it to work out. So I am going down to 80 grit because 120, I put pretty thick paint on because I wanted to get it in all these micro cracks if I could. And 80 grit, 120 isn't cutting fast enough. All right, so we've got that sanded pretty well. This is 80 grit, so it's a little fluffier, a little fuzzier than it normally would be. I'm not done with this, but I am going to try to use this little bit of oil I've got to kind of liven this up, kind of give you guys an idea what it might look like a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see that as much. The gold is going to be on this side super subtle, and that's the whole point of it, is that it's subtle. It's not overwhelming. Like clearly on this side, it's going to be way more noticeable because this would all be sanded and that wouldn't be, if that makes sense. And so that's going to be a big gold, you know, area. That's going to be a gold recession and things like that. But they're going to be overall the wood tone with little highlights of gold. That was the whole point of what I was doing with this. It wasn't to make super obvious gold areas in general. Same thing over here with those cracks. The gold would still be open, noticeable in the open crack, but the outside will be the tone of wood of ash. And ash is kind of this medium with the oil on it. It's kind of that medium tone of wood. Not too different than the Siberian elm tone, but it'd be kind of like this beigeish medium tone maybe. But it's a different texture for sure. The grain is different on ash. So yeah, that's what I've got to do to finish this guy up. So let me get to it, and thank you guys for stopping by. Thanks everybody that said hi. I had a lot of people show up tonight, which is awesome. I've got to do these more frequently. I just forget. So, and I get super busy. I apologize, but thank you guys so much for stopping by. Carol, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that. And like I said, later this evening, I'll put this up for public, and I'll put those links for all those tools that I mentioned. I'll put affiliate links from Amazon in the description if you guys want to come back and check for that. So thanks everybody. Have a good weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Oh, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. That way you don't miss one of my lives or one of the videos I put up. Thanks. Take care.